Hello and good evening. I'm going to interrupt your conversation so we can get started. I am so glad that you all are here. Welcome to Lord of Life Lutheran Church. My name is Kirsten Sowie Hoffman. I serve as the pastor of this congregation. We are so delighted that you are here. As the front of your program says, the mission is possible because you are here. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to you who are in this room. Welcome to our presenters. Welcome to our friends online. We're so glad that we can do that. And because we're live streaming, it automatically records, so you can share this with your friends later or invite people to check out our YouTube page and pull up all of the conversations from this week, which is a really great resource for us to have. A little bit about Mission Possible as a thing. Mission Possible is the annual servant learning opportunity of this congregation. It started in 2005 under the ministry of our retired deacon Heidi Cryer. Mission Possible uses an accompaniment model of service where we seek to learn from those in need by being with them and listening to their stories. We seek to be part of what is already being done to serve the vulnerable in our communities, and we seek to interact with agencies that provide direct services in our community. We recognize that joining together is the best way to address our community's challenges. Mission Possible has taken place at many locations over the years, sometimes local or regional, national, international. Being local this year allowed us to kind of rethink how to engage with the community, and I'm so proud of our planning team that came up with the many opportunities for us to serve and learn and listen as we seek to live out our faith this week. I want to acknowledge and thank them. I've been doing this every night. Some of you have been here to hear this each time, and they might be getting tired of being acknowledged, but it's important for us to do that because they worked really hard on this. So I want to thank them very much, especially for setting up this incredible lineup of presenters and all the work they did to organize our projects and tours. They are, and I'm going to name Carol Moser first because she's not here. She's in Canada for the Rotary. Hi, Carol. And then we have Susan Shipman and Marlise Futig and Donna Carey. Thank you. Is there anybody that did a project today or went on a tour? We had a bunch of things. I know there were some Union Gospel mission tours, men's shelter, women's shelter, library tour was today, I think. Bishop Skillstead Commons. I don't remember what else happened today, but I'm so glad that you came to join us tonight for this conversation. Your program tells you who the speakers are tonight, and there is one side blank of your program so that you can take notes. There's extra pens out there if you need them. And then I just have a few housekeeping things before we get started. Bathrooms are out there down the hall on the left. If those are full, go all the way down to the end of the building, and they'll be on the right. There is childcare if we need that tonight or future nights. If you know people with littles that wanted to be here, please invite them. If you are signed up for dinner this week, consider bringing your own refillable water bottle. Maybe fill it at home and then bring it in so that we can eliminate the bottled water waste that will outlive all of us. There also are a bunch of baked potatoes left over, Kelly tells me, so if anybody would like to take home, and we have foil for wrapping and all kinds of stuff, so if you would like to take home some baked potatoes for later, please do that, or maybe we can share that with some of our friends. Let's see, I think we're done with that one. Please silence your cell phones. That's a good thing to do. And then let's get into our content for tonight. So tonight, our focus is on shelters and permanent supportive housing. And so I want to introduce you to our moderator for tonight. Kirk Williamson describes himself as a recovering broadcaster who has flunked retirement twice. His second career was in healthcare communications, including work with the Benton Franklin Community Health Alliance. He received the award Kennewick Man of the Year in 2000. And he continues as part of that organization. He's also a founding member and past president of the Columbia Basin Badger Club, a nonprofit, nonpartisan community forum for civil discourse created in 2008. They regularly host speakers on international, national, regional, and local issues with differing opinions at their monthly luncheons. The Badger Club originally had a meeting scheduled this week on the topic of homelessness, and they graciously postponed their event so we could join forces for Mission Possible. Thank you for serving as our moderator, Kirk. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Pastor Kirsten, and good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I was pressed into service to substitute for Toboski. That's never an easy chore, but I'll do the best I can. So let me introduce the panelists, starting at the far end and moving this way, and then we'll give each panelist an opportunity to describe their particular organization's connections with homelessness in our community. So first is Reverend Jane Smetzer, who is the priest at All Saints Episcopal Church in Richland. Yes. Thank you. I knew I'd get it almost right. Deborah Biondolillo is the women's shelter manager for Union Gospel Mission. Jonathan Mallahan is connected with Catholic Charities who do housing, including the Bishop Skillstad Center in Pasco. Christine Stacy is with the Elijah Family Homes, and you met Toboski a couple days ago and probably will see much of him the rest of this week. Toboski Snipes is in charge of Snipes H3, which provides housing and material and support for young adults who are experiencing homelessness. So with that said, let's start at the where we started a minute ago with Pastor Jane Smetzer, who will talk to us about some of your experiences at All Saints Episcopal Church.
Thank you, Kurt. I am here because 3 years ago, our congregation looked outside and saw it was freezing, and more than freezing. We had a desperately cold snap in December of 2022 that was very unusually cold for this region. And as we were at what is kind of our parish family Christmas dinner, we call it Candles and Carols, sitting around talking about eating excellent food from a potluck supper and getting ready to sing Christmas carols that we had been putting off through the Advent season, noticed the conversation, it rolled around to the weather, and more than the weather, because the newspaper had just had that day an article about the various local day shelters that were going to be closed for the Christmas season. And that in Richland, the opportunities for day shelter are very limited. They are the library and the community center and a couple of other places. But all of those, because they are government facilities, they were closed Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. And we were looking at predictions of really dreadful weather for the next several days to come. And so a couple of our parishioners were talking about this, and midway through supper came up to me and said, "Jane, is there any reason we can't just open the parish hall and let people sleep on the floor? Isn't that better than letting them freeze to death?" And I, in a reckless moment, said, "Sure." And so we began. I announced it to the congregation. People went home from dinner and brought back sleeping bags and blankets and spare clothes and extra coats if they had them, right? And we set to work. We called the police department, we called the fire department, and we made one post on our very modest social media page that was my first experience with going viral. In an hour, we had 100 likes and shares, and by the end of that evening, it was close to 1,000. And people came out of the woodwork. How can I help? How can I help? How can I help? 2 hours after we put that post online, we had our first guest come to the door. In his case, a young man who had been visiting the Tri-Cities, couldn't make it home because the pass was closed, and had no money to stay in a hotel. So he slept on our parish hall floor on somebody's donated inflatable mattress and blanket, and in the morning he helped shovel the walk. But that's where it began. And that year, for 11 days, most of them 24 hours, as long as those day shelters were closed, and then all of them nights, we had anywhere from 3 to about 14 people sleeping in our parish hall. The two things that we learned out of that are, A, how much we need one another, because God bless the good folks at All Saints, they stepped up, and they stepped up in spades, and we still couldn't have done it by ourselves. Slightly, if I remember right, about half of the volunteers that came to staff the shelter and make meals and were from other congregations, including Lord of Life and a few others, or no congregation at all, just people who had a heart for seeing that their neighbors didn't freeze to death. The other thing that we learned was God protects the clueless. Because that whole week, God's fingerprints were all over everything. And the number of times that something went awry and could have gone horribly wrong and didn't. The time that one of our guests had a mental health crisis, it just happened that one of our volunteers on that shift was a counselor for the VA. When one of our guests decided he was going to smoke fentanyl in the men's room, it just happened that one of our guests was an addiction counselor and substance abuse expert who knew how to handle him and how to handle the bathroom so that nobody else was impacted. That's but 2 of the examples over those 11 days. And so at the end of it, we closed our doors, we locked up, we sweat a sigh of relief and said, all right, what have we learned? And the 2 questions I've got from people and that I asked myself, 2, what have we learned, and are we going to do this again? Well, the answer to the second was a rounding yes, but in order to do the second, we had to look at the first and try to do better. So that next year, we spent a lot of time and effort trying to learn more about this issue, to learn more about what we needed to know, to learn more about what the community needed. We had folks who took food handler license tests and CPR and mental health first aid and any number of other things. We put together a manual of instructions and information and intake forms, and we applied for and received a grant from the Three Rivers Foundation to help us pay for professional security. Wonderful. And that has made all the difference. And again, God's fingerprints were all over there. The second year we did this, we were open, if I remember right, for 14 nights, and we served about 24 people at a maximum at one point. Security was marvelous. Volunteers came out in force. It was all grand. But at the end of that, with the donations we had received about $10,000 in donations to help pay for security. Over that period, security cost us $9,948. God's providence is real. And so last year was year 3 for us. We did it again. And this time, the weather, we've gotten a little better about publicity as well as about how to do this. So it ran more smoothly, and the accidents that we had, we knew how to handle. When a woman fell off of a step and fell to the ground and broke her arm, we knew how to handle it. When another guest was found ODing in the bathroom, we knew how to handle it, and we had the supplies on hand to do so. We have learned, and we have learned by God's grace that God certainly protects the clueless, but that is no excuse for remaining clueless, right? And the more we delve into this, the more we see how very needful this is. This last time around, our maximum was 36 people on one night, the coldest night of them all, when our expected capacity was 20 for our little parish hall. And how very much we depend on and can learn from the members of our community who came to work and play and pray with us. Not only individuals from churches and around the community, but Lord of CUP and their Sent to Serve organization. Clean Sweep Tri-Cities was helpful. There's a gentleman named Camo Dave and his homeless ministry who showed up and helped to serve. There are a lot of people that want to make this happen, and there's a lot yet to do to address the underlying issues of all of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Jane. And now we'll just move along to Deborah Biondolillo from Union Gospel Mission and learn about their program. And we'll just keep moving along. There's lots to learn tonight. And when we get done, hopefully we'll know at least a couple of things we didn't know before we got here. So Deborah, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much for having me here. And I thank you all that came to visit me this morning at the shelter. We had a good time walking through the shelter and seeing how the shelter functioned, and in a over 100-year-old building. And so the actual building that we are in was built in 1914. So we are in a very old building. So, and those of you who came saw how old that building is. And so we've been in this, this area for 65 years, as the emblem says. I will say that we were present when Pasco was a railroad town, back when it first was coming into its first conceptions. And so we were a part of that. So we'll just go on to the next slide. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the proposed women's shelter. The women's shelter will be in Kennewick. The site will be on North Young Street, close to DSHS and WorkSource, kind of over where, in the area of where the Red Cross is, kind of in that area. Currently, we've raised over $4 million. But I got an update from my ED before I came, and he said it is 5.4 million. Yes. The proposed square footage of the building is going to be about 20,000 square feet to house at least 64 women and children. Which is double what we offer now. This past year, in 2024, we offered 9,431 nights of stay for the women and children of our community who are experiencing homelessness. We had an average of 4 to 14 children at the shelter on any given night. So I served as director back in, let's see, I have to think, 2016 to 2017, and I remember one Christmas where we had 14 children in our shelter, and that's plus the adults. So that's a lot. Okay, we'll just go to the next. So there were 2 questions that were submitted, and so I'm going to try to actually curtail my comments around those 2 questions. How is our agency addressing the Tri-Cities unhoused population? So we'll go to the next one. So the women, let me grab my thing. The Women and Children's Shelter is one of 2 emergency shelters that serve our community where clients can stay an initial 60 days. So when they come into our shelter, the men's shelter and the women's shelter, they are guaranteed 60 days worth of stay. Above and beyond that, they may probably, I would say, the large majority of the people that come in stay longer. And the way that they stay longer is because they're engaged in case management, which is one of our foundational things that we have at the Tri-City Union Gospel Mission, is case management. So if they're hooked up with case management and they need to be extended, then we have a governing force called the MDT, Multidisciplinary Team, where we meet and basically their case is brought to that MDT meeting, and then they vote on extension or not extension. And it's based on a lot of different factors. And so if they get an extension, they could be there another 30 days, another 45, maybe sometimes 60. So, and then every time when they come up on their end date, then they're able to apply for an extension if they're on rescue, or they're able, through their case manager, then to apply for an extension. So they can probably keep doing that up to about 2 years at our shelters. We do intakes and community hours from 1 to 3 every day of the week, as well as emergency crisis intakes referred from agencies. So a lot of times, sometimes the police call us and say, hey, we found this gal, and we need to know if she's able to come in. Fire department, mental health. We have a lot of different agencies we interface with. Elijah Family Homes is here. We interface with them. We interface with Mere Ministries, SARC, in those type of situations, sex trafficking, human trafficking, work trafficking, and we deal with all of those with them. Community hours are for those clients who need to shower. So during the community hours, the community clients can come in and shower during that time. So we do showers and we do intakes at the same time. They can also receive hygiene products and food bags that they can take with them. We interface with many community partners in our community on behalf of our clients. I could give you like a huge long list, but almost any community partner that we have out in the community, we're going to interface with. And so we have to have collaborating partnerships out in the community, just like you know that too, that enable to do the work that we do. Because like, you know, she said, we can't all do it by ourselves. So it's good to have good partners. We have ongoing intensive trauma-aware case management to assist our clients while they are at the shelter. That also links our clients to needed community services. So one of the things, like I said before, our foundations is case management. We really, really encourage all of our clients to get engaged with case management to help them to get from point A to point Z and help them through that process. Okay. So we provide 3 meals a day and showers for each client who enters the shelter. We also provide emergency assistance with clothing and personal hygiene if needed. So we do have clients that come in for intake. They have nothing. No clothes, no personal hygiene, and so we're able to help them with that when they come in, depending on the situation they come from. The most important aspect of what we do, and this is where I really drive it home and I get passionate about, is to extend the gospel of Jesus Christ to all who come to our door in act, speech, and assistance. Everything we do is an expression of the gospel towards the people that come to our doors. The Women and Children's Shelter strives to provide a place where clients can come and reset their lives to find a future and a hope. And I quoted that from Jeremiah 29:11, which is our year-long verse at our shelter. is Jeremiah 29:11. We're always working towards self-sufficiency for our clients. Okay, next one. So the second question was, how can we manage it better? So these are some things that I wrote down just as questions that I was, kind of posing to myself too as well. So on our next slide, you'll see, maybe, there we go. Our community is in desperate need of a detox. I don't know if you all know what a detox is. We do. We really need a detox in our community, and I know that Michelle Gerber is working feverishly to get that going and try to get that up and going. I just remember back when I was the director in around 2016-17 that we had a detox over in Pasco on 6th Street, which was really close to our shelter. And we were able to refer people there for detox, which was so great because once they went through the detox program, then they were able to turn right around and come back to us and get housing and get further assistance. So educating the community on what the shelters have the capacity to do and what we can't do, okay? Our shelters cannot house people that are detoxing or under the influence, especially at my shelter because I have children. So mental health is another issue. If their mental health acuity is way up here, that is not a good fit for the shelter. And so what we try to do in those instances is we try to defer them to treatment or to help that they can get to help them with their situation, and then they always can come back. We always extend that invitation to come back. Education of community services for those that are experiencing an episode of homelessness. So this is really good that we're doing this and people are here to expound on what they do. Like, I thoroughly am so thankful for this, because at our shelter, at the men's shelter, we do have a warming station. But here's where what happens is that, sometimes it doesn't cover women. So then we have to rely on this to get the women to help. Okay, I'm speeding along here. Education around...
Time is up.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay. Okay, I'm just wrapping up. Okay, so education around mental health, substance abuse, and how to properly refer, how to intervene and when not to, security and safety, understanding the sociological aspects of why people become homeless, and then build services around this, and being prepared when you encounter a homeless person is really, really important too. So if you want to know what that is, please ask me afterwards, and I will be glad to share that with you. So I have a last slide that has my information on there. You can email me. I'll share that little thing with you. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deborah. Next up is Jonathan Malahan, who is the Executive Director, I believe, of Catholic Housing Ventures. And Jonathan has been a presence in this community for quite a little while as they've been working to establish the Bishop Skillstad Center that is in Pasco, but we'll talk more about that. But Jonathan, the floor is yours. Thank you.
And thank you so much to all those who were able to join us for a tour of Bishop Skillstad Commons. I feel really blessed to have the opportunity to speak about the amazing work that Catholic Charities is doing at Bishop Skillstad Commons and in this community. And first, I'd like to cover three things. I'd like to talk a little bit about what does Catholic Charities do. I'd like to talk a little bit about what is permanent supportive housing and how does that work at Bishop Skillstad Commons. And then I'll wrap up with some brief remarks from that I gathered from our team members here who are far better experts on this community than I am about what opportunities there might be here in the Tri-Cities and specifically in Pasco. So first off, Catholic Charities Eastern Washington is an organization across 13 counties that are part of the Spokane Diocese of the Catholic Church. Catholic Charities is a ministry of the church. Our mission is to feed the hungry, heal the hurting, and welcome the stranger. And we're defined by our radical commitment to human dignity. And I have to tell you, human dignity, I'm going to tell a couple stories. Human dignity does not look a certain way. You don't have to make the right choices to have dignity. You don't have to say the right things. You have dignity. And that's the premise of our work. And that's the premise of permanent supportive housing. It's also the premise of permanent supportive housing that a safe, healthy place to live is part of what everyone deserves as part of their human dignity. So I'm going to tell you two stories. The first story is about a young mother and her estranged spouse. Their family separated by the courts as they went through some challenges and struggles in their lives and made choices that were not in the best interest of their family. They came to Catholic Charities and participated in our Rising Strong family emergency shelter that brings families together, helps them heal from the trauma they've experienced, helps them gain skills to move forward in their lives, and then ultimately helps them to be reunified through the courts and move on to permanent housing and beyond. This family did just that. They took advantage of every opportunity, worked really hard, led classes inside of the program, took the initiative to help others as they were moving along in their journey, reunited together as a couple, advanced their education. Both became employed after receiving certifications and further education, were able to achieve permanent housing at one of our permanent housing sites in Spokane, a family housing site. They leveraged that opportunity and their employment and their reunited family to be able to move into a single family home where they continue to grow and thrive and are currently saving up to buy themselves a home of their own to live in for their growing family. They've had another child since they've moved into that single family home. That is human dignity. I'd like to also tell you a story about a gentleman who spent 10 years on the streets. He drank every day and for most of his life. He had the opportunity to be housed in one of our permanent supportive housing communities. And after spending 10 years in chronic homelessness, which is an isolating and scary experience, for the first time he was in a spot where he belonged, where he was part of the community. He spent his days in the community room. He spent his days with others. He spent his days in the gardens and planted sunflowers. He died in his home. That is human dignity. Human dignity does not look like one thing. Everyone has it. And that is what permanent supportive housing is about. Everyone is welcome. You're not there because you've earned it. You're not there because you've made the right choices. You're there because you deserve a place to live because of your dignity. That is what Catholic Charities does at Bishop Skilsted Commons, and it would not have been possible without Carol Moser and the many of the people in this room who stood up and said, we need to do this for the least among us. So I am so thankful to be here to be able to share that with you and to be able to share that with the folks who joined us today. Now, if you joined the tour today, you know I really like to talk about finance and facts and figures, and I'm happy to do that. Storytelling is not my forte, but I would love to share with you afterwards if you've got questions. How do we make it happen? How do we operate it? All those lovely things. But it is inherently a place to be for people for as long as they need it. You do not earn it. And we do this because we're Catholic, not because anyone else is. So bring whatever belief system you have, wherever you're at, you are welcome. That is permanent supportive housing. So let me talk a little bit about what is next and what are the opportunities that we see in the Pasco community and the Tri-Cities. Well, I think that there are a lot of great things going on. I'm amazed, and you really shouldn't have had me talk after two excellent women who are doing amazing things in the community. It's tough, but I've got to say, you can build on the strengths that you have here. You have a lot of people who have a lot of passion and expertise to help the most vulnerable. Lean into those strengths. Lean into the people that are already doing the good work and invest deeply in those organizations. You need more housing. And I don't need to know anything about your community to know that that is true, but I do know that you have a dire shortage of affordable housing. And it is not just permanent supportive housing. That is not a panacea to homelessness. It is one intervention for chronically homeless, highly vulnerable people. You need many other interventions. Every path to homelessness is unique, and every path out of homelessness is unique. Catholic Charities doesn't have the right answer. Union Gospel Mission doesn't have the right answer. We all have answers, and they're good, and they work for some people and they don't for others. So know that, and invest in many paths out as you can. Invest in market rate housing, invest in senior housing, invest in affordable housing, invest in housing. Because the number one reason that people are homeless is not because they're addicted to drugs, it's not because they've got behavioral health issues, it's because they can't afford a place to live. And so please invest in housing everywhere you can go. So another opportunity that I think is a little harder to do, because investing in housing is actually simple, you just have to do it. But you also need to build some capacity in the community to respond to those who are in crisis. We have residents who are at the worst spot in their life, and we're trying to hold them and keep them in a safe space and help them move forward and overcome the trauma of their lives. We need more partners in this community and more investment in those emergency intervention systems that help people who are suffering in crisis to move through it and beyond it so that they can take advantage of the housing that's provided. That is something that we would love to work with partners in the community to see a higher level of investment in. We would love to see your emergency responders receive more investment, specifically so they have the tools that their jobs are hard enough. I mean, they have so much on their plates. We need to give them better and more tools to respond to individuals who are vulnerable in crisis and meet them where they're at. So that would be another opportunity, and I'm talking about a lot of investing. I don't know where the money's going to come from. That's not, I'm not going to be able to share that with you, but it exists here. You have a wealth of resources here. Those things need to happen in order for the community to respond. And what I'm saying here is true here, it is in Spokane. How am I doing on time? Am I? One more minute. Okay. Well, let me wrap up by saying I invite anyone who's heard what I've said tonight and has a different perspective, come up and chat with me afterwards. You're not going to hurt my feelings. My background is in philosophy, and one of the things you learn when you study philosophy is you shouldn't be too certain about anything you believe to be true. So I'm very welcoming. If anyone says, hey, that really didn't make sense to me, come and share your perspective with me. That's how I learn, and I always enjoy those conversations. But thank you so much for the chance to speak with you and share my thoughts tonight.
Thank you, Jonathan, and much appreciated what you have to say. Christine Stacy is next from Elijah Family Homes. They have a little bit different take on housing, I think.
We do. I'm Christine Stacy. I am the program director of the Transition to Success program at Elijah Family Homes. We provide a 3-year wraparound case management and recovery housing for families that are in recovery. There are some qualifications to qualify for our program. You need to have 9 months clean and sober or more to qualify, 51% custody of a child or more, and a housing insecurity for something other than income. So a criminal record, felonies on your record, evictions on your record, basically anything that is going to tell you no when you're trying to go out and get your own home. We have a lot of people come to us from, they go into treatment and then they go into recovery housing, sometimes submission, and once they get to that point, they're like, okay, well, we're ready to get our family back together. We want to go rent a house or an apartment, and everybody's just like, no, we're not renting to you. Your criminal record's too long. You have too many evictions on your record, and then they come to us. You have to have that to be in our program, and that's kind of what is different with us. We bring them in. Their housing or their 3-year program does not start until they get into housing. There is oftentimes a wait list, but that once they get accepted into the program, they can utilize our case management services. Like Deb said, case management is so important, especially addressing addiction recovery. I am, too, a person in long-term recovery. And so, when we decide to get clean and we decide to get our lives back on track, and all of a sudden it's like, well, how do you make a budget? How do you go out and get a checking account? Or how do I find childcare? These are all the life skills that we get to teach our moms and dads in our program. And then the most wonderful days that we have, I mean, just in the last 2 weeks, we're able to take four people off our waiting list and hand them keys to their very first home with their kids outside of a recovery. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. Yeah, and you know, kind of like they've all said, we don't have enough housing. You know, I have 19 housed right now. I have 26 families in my program, 19 housed and 6 on the waiting list, which will go down. We are currently embarking on a new project. It's called our Cottage Home Community. And so that's super exciting. We have an existing house on the property that we got that we just were able to house a mom, a dad, and 5 children. So that was amazing. And so the property is big enough that we get to build 2-bedroom cottage homes on the property. And so the groundbreaking will start with that on July 23rd. So we're super excited for more housing, of course. But yeah, we just need more housing. So yeah, I think that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Christine. And we'll wrap up our panel with Tabasky Snipes, who is sort of a man of all seasons and all talents, but and it will be the moderator for the rest of the week. But Tabasky is the CEO of Snipes H3, and I'll let you explain what that is, Tabasky, and go from there. Thank you. The floor is yours.
All right, thank you, Kurt, and thank you everybody for being out here, and thanks for the panel for showing up and making this thing happen. Mission Possible. I'm retired Army, so great name. Everything is possible, and we got to accomplish the mission, right? Like you said, my name is Tabasky Snipes. I'm the founder and CEO of Snipes H3, which stands for Housing, Hope, and Humanity. That's the 3 H's. I'm also the chairman of the Benton and Franklin Continuum of Care. That's an organization that's mandated by HUD to have in order to receive those state and federal fundings, and we kind of oversee the homeless housing as well as some of the fundings that's going towards that. But I'm mainly here to talk to y'all about Snipes H3 right now. We are a young adult program where we provide mentorship and housing for 18 to 24-year-olds, as well as our community empowerment program where we work with all ages. To the point to where we've even went into the schools to help mentor, a young individual that was a challenging student. So we're here to provide service to the community in every way possible. We are a small but mighty team. We are fully volunteer organization of about 7 folks who our young adults know that they can count on any time of the day, 24 hours a day, to the extent to where we've slept on hospital floors to make sure that they knew that somebody cared about them. We take a very holistic approach to everything that we do. There's obviously the clinical side of things, but sometimes they run out of meds. You still have to manage yourself, right? It's not your get out of jail free, I get to do whatever I want to do. Yeah. So we teach them how to manage all of that and during moments of crisis. Whenever they go through that, we take an approach to where there's a lot of accountability with our young adult program. One of the things we learned when we first started doing this was that you have kids that can't figure out why they need to continue to live. Mm-hmm. So naturally, we have a mindset like, I don't want to put too much on their plate because that I might give the words to make them take that next step. Well, one of the things we learned that accountability was the strongest way to keep them from taking that next step. What accountability does, it gives them a sense like, man, you really think I can do that? Why are you telling me to do that? I can't do that. Yes, you can. It's possible, right? So when we've taken that approach and everything, we have classes 5 days a week. We provide beds for 12 young adults, 18 to 24. When they move in, everybody get a fresh set of bedding. Nobody has ever slept on somebody else's pillow at our program or somebody else's sheets. We take it for granted how powerful that can be, right? Having that fresh linen for the first time ever in your life at the age of 18 years old. It's a powerful thing. A lot of times they're asked, how do we get the young adults? First of all, we've only had, from my memory serves me correctly, about 3 people who have reached out on their own to find us. And most of those is because their mom or dad told them to reach out. So oftentimes it comes to a third party, you all, right? Yeah. This team up here. We have a great partnership with the community as a whole in order to make sure that our young adults get what they need. So they'll give us a call up on the phone. We'll do an over-the-phone interview. And again, accountability, right? So we have the phone conversation, and we give them a brief overview about what we do. And then the main thing is, are you willing to put in the work to better your life? If the answer is yes, we typically give them an opportunity. The next thing, we set a date for them to show up. They show up on time, okay, they're making some effort here. Right? After that, we'll do the background check on them, then we'll get the move-in date. So now that's 3 obstacles that we've given them before they can even move into our program. They don't understand that they're being vetted that way, right? They don't understand that they're saying yes to the betterment of their life, but they are. And then once they move in, we hit the ground running. Are you in the education program, or are you in our employment program? Every young adult that goes through our program must finish their high school or their GED. That is their obligation with us. Once they've completed that, then we help them with job placement via Lord of Life, providing some of our mock interviews. Thank you all for that. And then we help them with resumes and everything else that they need with clothing and all of that in order to get a job. Next thing that people often ask us, where do we get our funding from? We've been self-funded for quite some time now. And outside of the self-funding, I'll say it's about 75% self-funding. We get some generous donations. Lord of Life is one of those organizations that give us a very generous donation. We have other church congregations that gives us donations. We have individual community members. So all of that is appreciated. We've just started applying for grants, and people ask, well, there's lots of grants out there. Why don't you apply for them? Well, they kind of hamstring you in some ways. And towards the end, a powerful statement that makes a lot of sense is that we work through people work, not paperwork. So since we are short-staffed with volunteers, that's kind of the reason why. So if any of y'all are grant writers, come holler. One of the things that we also do is like the how. The how do we provide our mission? We have classes 5 days a week. We have physical trainer that comes in every Monday, and they must work out 3 times a week. That's part of their responsibility. All right. We have group meetings on Tuesdays. We have yoga classes on Wednesdays. We bring in guest speakers of all walks of life, from mayors to the police department to the armed forces to past participants, to pour back into these young adults. We have Fridays where we have our Family Fun Fridays where we'll do an event. Like, we challenge them and work hard. I talked about that already. We also show them that, hey, it's okay to love yourself and have fun every now and then. So we have another church group, Hill Springs, who goes out and once a month they have a small group that will fund one of our outings: axe throwing, bowling, swimming, barbecues. That gives that sense of community, that sense of belonging, right? And that's been our main staple for helping them work through. We can give them a lot of what to do and a lot of how to do it, but that want to do it is the part that makes all the difference. So a lot of times feeling that love and that respect for our staff gives them that, like, you know what, I don't really know how this is going to work out, but I trust A, B, and C, so I'm going to do it. And then that's how they continue to grow, and we appreciate all of that. Some of the challenges that we have is, like they mentioned, the funding. And it's not just funding for staff, it's funding for the items that we need. They have a washer and dryer. As you can imagine, with 12 young adults, we will be full next week with all of our beds completely full. And we take men, women, and everything in between, so long as they say, yes, I want to better my life and I'm willing to work. So, but the washer and dryer, they go out, right, after all of their use from all their young adults. Our refrigerators, just simple stuff. The bedding, like the bed in a box, those, if we can stackpile those, that would be amazing. So if you don't get anything else out of what we're doing here today, just know that there are people out here that have help. And when it comes to housing, a lot of times when they mention that we need more housing, there's this notion that not in my backyard. But the reality is that if we don't get ahead of it and put them in our communities and work with them that way, they're going to be in your backyards anyway.
Yeah, they will.
And when we talk about the funding that's needed, we fund for every homeless person anyway. Every time they go to the ER, every time the police department's called. So if you're thinking about ways to give back, go back and watch these videos at the end when we're done on Thursday. Watch them again and really soak in how you can give back to the community.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you, Tabasky. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's your turn. Pastor Kirsten has a wireless microphone, and because we have an online audience as well tonight, we want to make sure that they can hear your questions and hear what you have to say. So the drill is the same as it has been since we were all about this high, which is raise your hand, and we'll go from there. So while you're thinking about a question, I have one that I want to ask our panel, and that is, at your present capacity, how close are you to reaching your maximum capacity in terms of funding available now, facilities available now? In other words, how close is our community to being out of space? Let's start with Pastor Jane. There we go. Thank you, Tabasky.
As I said earlier, our expected capacity is 20 people, so we are long since past that. We almost doubled that this last winter. Because as many have said, the number of people who are unhoused or underhoused is far greater than the added capacity of all of these places that you're hearing about today. And sometimes they can go to one because there's not a fit for another. So we desperately need more room. But, our capacity is 20, and we had 35 last winter.
Deborah?
Well, at the women's shelter, we have a capacity of 32 women and children at this present time. Over at the men's shelter, I believe it's 164 for men. They have a larger building and have a larger capacity there. When our new building is built, we will double our capacity to be able to serve more women and children. And as far as funding, I did mention when I was up here that we're at $5.4 million right now, and it's going to cost about $9.5 million to actually build the building. So we're about halfway there, a little over half maybe. Right? Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. I forgot the second half of the question, or capacity for funding. Yeah. In our experience so far, it costs us about $1,500 a night to do what we do in security and food and we rely absolutely on donations and that grant that the Community Foundation has provided every year. But there we are.
Jonathan, how about Bishop Skillstead Commons? Are you full, close to full? How many more do you need to build?
Well, we have 6 vacant units right now, and we have applicants for all those. And I'm sure if we had 100 vacant units right now, we would have an applicant for each of those. So, I don't have good data to tell you exactly how many permanent supportive housing units are needed, but it is definitely more than exist in this community, and it's certainly not a factor of 1 or 2, but maybe many more factors of what exists in this community. So, the Department of Commerce does have a projection projection of what housing needs, and I'm looking at you because I imagine you know the numbers better for this community. I think that would be a good place to start. They've done some good study to derive that. From a funding standpoint, we have 5 FTEs on supportive services in our building. We have a property manager, we have 2 security positions, and we have 1.5 maintenance individuals. We are losing money every day. Bishop Skillstead Commons is open. We're not doing it because it makes money. So we absolutely need more resources to continue to serve even those that we're serving at Bishop Skillstead Commons.
If I was a smart aleck, which we all know I'm not, it occurred to me to ask Pastor Jane and you, Jonathan, something like, well, I thought churches are supposed to lose money.
Yes, and I answer to investors in the tax credit program. And so, yes, we do this not to make money, but because of our mission. And if you cannot demonstrate a smart business plan with a sustainable model, it is hard to bring the significant dollars to the table to accomplish the work that we do. So I think it really comes down to it has to meet the double bottom line. It has to balance and meet your mission.
Pastor Jane, you want a little more? add to
I
that?
would say that a church is not supposed to lose money, but a church ideally should be self-supporting. Yes. And we do it, like anybody else, it costs money in this day and age to keep the lights going on and the heat on and provide a space. And we are absolutely, utterly dependent on the kindness and generosity of our parishioners and our neighbors.
A very wise hospital administrator once said to me, no margin, no mission. Yeah. So time for put that same question to Christine.
Well, we currently have 6 people on our waiting list. 4 of those will go into housing by July 1st, which will fill up all of our housing units. And then come July, the first week of July, I'll be accepting another 9 families. So that waiting list will go back up to 11. So yeah, we're over capacity. And funding-wise, we rely a lot on donations and grants as well. So we're, always looking for supporters and all the things. So.
Tabosky, how about you?
All right, so we have 12 total beds. Our participants can stay up to 2 years, and if things are going well and they're at the point where they need an extension, we can provide that. So they're doing well, and they remain at our facility on average, I'll say about 9 months, which is great because some of those are moving on to their own apartment. They're renting rooms with friends that they've been working for a while. So our capacity, we typically have about 8 or 9 folks, so we'll go with an average about 8. We are looking to expand if we can get an additional home to put them in. That way they give them an immediate sense of something to strive for. So that would be awesome. And as far as the financial capacity, each of our participants costs about $1,700 a month to operate our facility adequately. We don't get that. So we operate with what we have. Our volunteers help fund, obviously with their time, so that's why we don't have any paid employees right now. But yeah.
All right, great, thank you. Set that over. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard a lot in the last little while. I see a question over here, and Pastor Kirsten will deliver the microphone. Please use the microphone.
Sure. I have 2 burning questions. One of them along the financial side of it, which, forgive me, but why isn't this a community governmental obligation? Why are we needing to rely on donations from the public?
Well, as the chair of the COC, we have about 60 organizations that show up to our meetings on an occasional basis. Not everybody's there every time, but in total about 60 folks. As far as financing, the government does actually pay for a lot of the organizations through their grants. So they are involved. It's on the community to reach out for the ones that we need in order to provide our mission, because our community is different from a community over in Wyoming, a community in California. So a lot of the programs, and I've heard this from the panel, get government funding.
Anyone else want a piece of that one?
Well,
Go
I would
ahead.
just, I guess I want to highlight how much funding is being invested into housing in your community from various levels of government. So let's take Bishop Skillstead Commons, for example. It's funded with about $17 million of low-income housing tax credit equity. That is essentially tax dollars the government never collected, because corporations are able to write those down on their tax returns. So they purchase those tax credits, they can write those off of their tax liability. $5 million of the capital came from the Housing Trust Fund, which is the state program that is funded by the taxpayers of the state of Washington. We receive 811 funding as a subsidy through HUD, Housing and Urban Development Department. That's intended for individuals with disabilities. We receive an operating grant from the Healthcare Administration of Washington that pays for those 5 FTEs of supportive services, or 4 of the 5 FTEs of supportive service positions on site. So you are heavily invested as a taxpayer into this form of housing, and I think it is because the government wants to have a safety net for the most vulnerable citizens in the community. It's just not enough, and it is not cheap.
I would only add that, yes, your tax dollars do pay for this in many ways, and it is simply not enough for the full population of the people who need those services, and so we end up stepping in. And some of it is that, and some of it is the, in some quarters, I have spoken with neighbors who say, well, we don't really have a homeless problem here, do we? Because that's big cities, not the Tri-Cities. And so why should my tax dollars go to X when that's not really our problem? And so some of it is simply a set of well-intentioned blinders, perhaps.
While you have the mic, Jane. Sorry. Really quick question for you, and you want to talk about it later, that's okay. But has anyone considered the need for an emergency cooling / air quality shelter for this summer?
We have had that conversation. The challenge that we have is, as congregations go, we are not especially large, and we don't necessarily have the capacity. We actually have a dozen different community organizations who use our building for various purposes, because while we gratefully accept contributions, we don't charge rent. And so we elected to do this wintertime when it's too cold, as much as it is needed in summertime for cooling centers. There are daytime cooling centers, more of them available, that people can access. Not only that community center and the library that I mentioned in Richland, but various other groups and restaurants and grocery stores that will welcome or at least tolerate people to hang out if they need to.
Anyone else? Questions back here in the corner?
Yeah, I have a question regarding affordable housing for the very low-income community. And we have learned during our presentation at Kennewick City Hall that the city of Kennewick is doing a lot of building building affordable housing for low-income families. I would say most of you are from Pasco or located, no, I know, you are Richland, Jane. But we have also heard that Richland is not doing much to help solving this problem of growing unhoused population. So can you say anything to that?
I think, is that a Tabasky question or a Christine question?
I think the COC.
No.
Well, at the COC, we've reached out to all of the leadership in all of the cities to be involved in our COC. Kennewick is heavily involved. Pasco shows up, and you're right. We haven't had many members of Richland to show up, and it's that notion, as you mentioned earlier, about we don't have a homeless problem. So we're addressing that. We are knocking on doors, and from yesterday's panel, from what I understand, a meeting that I had earlier today, what I understand is they're starting to engage and understand that, hey, even if we don't feel like we have a problem, but we don't help out Kennewick and Pasco, we will have that problem. So from my understanding is that they're willing to have that conversation a little bit more now, so.
Deborah.
I do know that every quarter at our place at the men's shelter in Pasco, they have a huge event there that is a whole bunch of agencies from the community converge on our men's shelter and set up tables and are ready to meet those that are experiencing homelessness. And that I do know that the city of Richland is involved in. They're one of the key planners of that with Aaron Bertner, who is at the men's shelter. And so this has been going on for probably, this might be in July, might be their fourth one, I believe, that they're putting on. So that is a huge collaboration with people from Richland that are trying to promote assistance and awareness and also bringing agencies together to actually meet the needs of those experiencing homelessness.
I will add that in Richland, because that's where we are, we have had tremendous support from the police department and the fire department and the community center leaders who have worked with us to establish what we need and to respond to needs as they occur. My experience with the city council is that they say that they tell me that there is a limited amount that they can do as city council, that this is a responsibility of the county. And I have not yet had any response in letters that I have sent to the county. What I will say is that Benton County, if you go to their website and you look up issues of homelessness, what you see featured is the Union Gospel Mission in Pasco. So here we are.
I think Christine wanted to add to that as well.
Well, I don't know if you were going to touch on this, but the Home Art Funds. So at Elijah Family Homes, we applied for, what does it stand for? I know. Anyways, so through the city of Richland, we applied for a grant, and we got awarded this grant, and the grant is not client-specific. So with this grant, homeless people can come in, meet with me. We can help them with some case management. We can help them search for housing. We can pay for application fees for apartments or houses. We can pay their move-in deposit to move into the apartment or house. We can also pay for utility deposits if they have a balance owing from Benton PUD or any other electrical service. So, and that's all through the city of Richland.
Yeah, it's a consortium between all three cities, but it's main ran out of the Richland district. So the ARP stands for American. Oh, I lost it. Yes, it's a good program. We'll put American Rescue Plan. There you go. We also received that. It is a reimbursement grant, which means what? You got to have the money first. So, but it has been super helpful as we move through and help the community. So, the other thing I wanted to mention about he talked about the event that's coming up. It is called and anybody online too, it's the community support event, and that's will be at the Union Gospel Mission. And we have lots of organizations within that helps out the homeless community and those in need in general, from healthcare to job employment to food insecurities. And that'll be at the Union Gospel Mission on July 9th. And it starts at 2:30 and it will end at 4:30. So everybody online, go check it out.
Thank you. Other questions, please raise your hand if you have other questions. There's one over here.
So we've heard a lot about great programs and great places for people to move out of homelessness, but the most visible homeless people I see are maybe the guys outside of Winco or the fellow in the Uptown Mall with the wagon. Are they on a waiting list to get into someplace, or is that a different population than the population that's currently served by Union Gospel Mission or Bishop
They're kind of on their
Skillstead's?
own waiting list. Here's what it is. There's a lot of people that you mentioned that are panhandling. And people who panhandle sometimes are dishonest about how they're representing themselves and will take advantage of good-hearted people in their compassion and everything. So when that was part of what I was going to say at the end of my speech, one of the things that can be done is you can put together a gallon bag, Ziploc bag, and in that Ziploc bag, you're going to have a bottle of water, you're going to have some protein bars in there, you're going to have some personal hygiene things in there. And here's a key thing that you can do. We have on our website, if you go on there, we have little touch cards that you can print off. And I recommend you that you print them off on cardstock and then cut them and then place them in the gallon bag that you are putting together and staple a bus ticket to it. And with that, you can approach these people, or if they approach your car, you can give this to them. And in the winter, you have gloves, you have hats, you have scarves, socks, all of those things that they would probably need during the winter. During the summer, it's more about hydration, maybe some of those hydration packets that you can put in there. You can maybe double up on the water, because when it gets really hot out there, then you don't want to see people dehydrated, because that gets dangerous. So thinking about seasonally putting certain things in there, but that key thing is that touch card that lets them know that they have a place where they can come and shower, they can get a meal, and they can even do an intake to get a bed. And that's really, really important. Now, you can do this, and then they'll say, I'm not going there. They won't let me come there. So you hear a lot of that. So just be prepared that they may accept it, they may not. But it is something that you can do as a community member when you come upon somebody who is homeless. Carry a case of water in the back of your car. There's just all kinds of things that you can be ready to do if you come upon somebody who is homeless and on the streets, much what you're saying. A lot of them, and here's another thing I know, some people are homeless because they want to be homeless. And we come upon those people as well. So.
Tabasky, go ahead.
So the question that you brought up is a multifaceted question. There's many ways to attack it. I think that's one of the best ways to do it. If you have it in your heart to give back, and I think what we're speaking of, you have your chronically homeless folks, your folks who are recently homeless, and those that just found themselves homeless and don't know what to do. So there's different ways to approach it. I know at the COC, what we're doing right now, you can see you have the Conestoga huts out there. So that there's different levels. So we're trying to take care of at least have an option for everybody at every level. If they're on substance abuse, if you can go back to tonight and look at the panel from yesterday, Jason Bliss spoke on substance abuse very elegantly that everybody can understand. But we're trying to create on a county level to where folks on the streets is not ready to get sober, not ready to deal with their traumas. At least we can provide them a bed to sleep at night so they can feel rested. From there, they can transition to the next level, the Union Gospel Mission. And from there, they get that wraparound service where they can start working, right? Gain employment, get their own apartment, and just move up. So it's a process in order to help folks move along. And sometimes if they're not ready, then they're not ready, and it is what it is. So.
We have another question in the back here. And we're getting close to time.
Sorry, Tabaski kind of answered my question or spoke to some of it. On Sunday night, we heard Gavin Cooley talk about how he walks the streets in the mornings, but he took people with him and they go and they ask the question, would you like to go to jail or would you like to have a bed to sleep in? Would you like to have treatment? And the majority of the people wanted a bed to sleep in. What we're missing are beds to sleep in, regardless of whether or not they have an addiction or whether they just got evicted because they didn't have the money to pay their rent. We don't have, what I understand, we don't have those beds that don't ask the questions and don't have any barriers. It just seems like we're missing the low barrier entrance level where they have a place to sleep. And last night, what we heard was the first thing you give them is a place to sleep. And then maybe they can even think or ask questions. I see buildings that are empty around here. There's a grocery store in Richland on Lee Boulevard that some of us have talked about. Why is that not a place for people to sleep at night? So there are other places that I'm sure all around where they're not rented, they're not being used, and banks are writing them off as a loss. And yet we have people sleeping on the street. And I think there's more people on the street that want to be sleeping inside. So that's my question. Why not?
So,
Tabaski, go ahead, and then Jonathan, I think, wants to add to that question.
Well, I suppose I would just say two things. Trauma changes your brain chemistry. And it changes how you react and your kind of the intensity of your reaction. It can change how you process information and how you're perceived by others. And that's not a belief, that's a scientific fact. And that can make encountering people who have experienced trauma, challenging. And the things you hear from them and the behaviors they're exhibiting, they may not compute with us in the way that they're intended or they're experiencing it. So I guess in all the interactions you have with anyone in the world, because you never know someone's trauma, is to just keep in mind we can't see the world through another's eyes. So we have to just meet them with love and compassion. And I think that's what many of these organizations do so well. But one of the things the way Catholic Charities does that, and we don't do this here, but we do it in Spokane, is we have low barrier shelters like the House of Charity and a program called The Catalyst. The Catalyst was a hotel that was converted in the span of 60 days into an emergency shelter program that has highly supportive services that help people overcome substance use, help people overcome the trauma they've experienced and gain job skills and become housed. Investing in that type of intervention that does not have a requirement before you're able to enter that program, that's not the right answer for everyone. And I think that's a really important theme to have. It's like, that is not saying that's better than another shelter. It's not. It is as good as another shelter, and it might work better for some people. But having that in your community, I think, is a really important opportunity, because what we see, and Gavin Cooley, who I served with the city of Spokane on Mayor Condon's cabinet for many years, a great man and a really big-hearted man, what he is advocating for is this sort of push-pull, the push of enforcement and the pull of services. And so he would tell you that a model like the Catalyst is a great place to say, well, hey, what you're doing here on the street tonight might be impacting the community that you're part of in a way that you don't intend. We've got another option for you. We've got two. We'd prefer you take this option. We want that to be an option for people regardless. And I think that that's something your community should consider as to how to build and invest deeply. It's not inexpensive to do those sorts of services and interventions.
I'll make this quick. I'm glad you brought up beds. So our Tri-Cities community, we have beds, but we don't have enough. And what Snipes H3 is doing with the funding from the Hallmark grant and then the input of the community, we've had a website that's built. And with this website, every organization will be reached out to every week and ask, how many beds do you have available? How many beds do you have total? How many do you have available? It's taken the model from Oxford Vacancies House, and we're extending it out to the entire community. So now, if you have an individual that has even a bed for rent, but some of our mentors and counselors have been working with this individual, hey, they're safe. We can trust them in your house. If you have a bed available, they will be a good fit. They can help you out with the garden. They can do all of that. So with that, you'll be able to go to that website and literally see how many houses in real time, how many beds Real Time Union Gospel Mission has, how many beds Real Time Elijah Family Home has available right now for different demographics and locations.
Let's kind of wrap up with that, and thanks to Pastor Kirsten for hosting us, and for the good people of Lord of Life Lutheran for hosting us and for showing up. Part of the magic is showing up. So let's take the microphone now and hand it to Pastor Jane, and ask each of you for about a minute or less about what do you wish everybody in this room and online would take away from this conversation.
I wish you would take away how very much your efforts matter in ways large and small, whether you donate money or show up to volunteer or buy a cot. We need cots at All Saints. No one of these groups can do it alone, and the problem is bigger than all of us, and can be addressed if only we have the will to address it. Thank you.
Wow, I think she just kind of put it all in a nutshell for all of us. And that's true at the UGM, is that we covet our volunteers highly, and people that give of their time, that come and volunteer, and those who give financially, we are so thankful for that as well in our community. We can't survive without our community and our volunteers, and we are very thankful for that.
I don't want to sound repetitive, but love really matters. Yes. Your presence really matters. Your presence and your expressions of love for others at council meetings, at community meetings, at neighborhood council meetings, in conversations with your neighbors, as you pass the street and smile at someone who's having a hard day. Those are meaningful acts. They help us do the work that we do, and they help the people who are in the toughest parts of their lives or their days feel a little bit more like they belong to this community, because that's something that homelessness takes from you. Yeah. So that's what I'd add.
I'm going to just say kindness. Kindness to, kind of like we were talking earlier, if you do come up to homeless people on the street, just show them kindness, whether they look like they're loaded on drugs or anything. It's hard out there, and speaking from experience, it's hard out there, and it's hard to know you're a part of a stigma. And for a person to just come up and hand you a bottle of water or a sandwich, it could change everything for them, and it's all just about planting a seed. So,
Can you wrap it up in a minute?
Absolutely. All right. Snipes HC stands for Housing, Humanity, and Hope. If you don't take anything away from this, take away hope. There is hope that we will be able to help every individual that's in our communities. As an athlete, you're only as strong as your weakest link, right? Your weakest player. So we have to make sure that everybody is able to rise. The mission is possible.
Yep. Amen.
Thank you, everyone. And now let's hand the microphone back to Pastor Kirsten. Again, with my thanks for inviting me and inviting the Badger Club to be part of this evening. And thanks to our panelists who did a marvelous job in spite of my help.
Let's say thank you to all of them. And I'll close with the way that we've been closing the last couple nights. So I'm just going to invite you into a moment of silence as we try to just absorb and sit in the conversation that has just been had. And then I have two poems tonight. I've had one poem the last couple nights, and I just couldn't decide tonight. So the first one is called Street Birthday. Let me count the ways of celebrating birthdays when you're living on the street. It makes a difference if you're one, or have a friend to share the fun when you're celebrating birthdays on the street. The only birthday cake you'll see is the single piece you order, and it won't be free. Happy birthday to me on the street. One more year I don't want to remember. Can't we skip ahead to September? Or beam me back to when I was tender, before I had a birthday on the street. And if somehow that can't be done, could we agree to just keep mum and hold this intelligence between us, you and me, and hope that one day soon we'll have something to celebrate, a boon, beyond the annual blip on our journey around the sun. The next one is called Homelessness. Homelessness, it's all verbiage, all grammar. There are those who have homes, but have forgotten their corazones, hearts in Spanish. If we can help them comprender, understand, their privilege, and remember and understand who God is, then perhaps those who are homeless of hearts can help the homeless. And we all heal our hearts as one together. Thank you for being here. It's a joy to be with you.